오늘 많은 분들이 자리를 함께 해주셔서 감사의 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다. 뉴 게임플레이는 이제 21세기 현대인의 삶에서 하나의 문화로 자리를 잡은 게임이라는 영역에 대해서 새롭게 조명하고 이를 통해서 인간과 기술의 관계성에 대해서 생각해보고자 하는 전시입니다. 어떻게 보면 이는 백남준 선생님이 평생에 걸쳐서 탐구하셨던 인간과 자연 그리고 기술의 조화라는 영역과 그 맥을 함께한다고 볼 수 있습니다. 이번 전시에는 총 34개 팀 그리고 45점의 작품이 선보일 예정인데요. 현대 미술 작가들의 실험적인 작업에서부터 대중적인 게임 그리고 이 게임이라는 형식을 차용한 작품 등 그 다양한 형식과 내용의 작품들이 선을 보일 예정입니다. 이를 통해서 현대 예술의 하나의 장르로 자리를 잡은 디지털 게임 플레이 문화가 현대 미술과 어떤 영향을 주고받고 있는지 함께 가늠해 볼 수 있는 그런 전시가 될 예정입니다. 특히 이번 전시는요, 저희 백남준아트센터와 ZKM이 함께 선보이는 그런 전시인데요. 오늘은 이번 전시를 기획하신 ZKM의 수석 큐레이터인 베른하르트 제렉세와 ZKM 연구원 스테판 슈빙글러 이 두 분을 모시고 직접 전시를 기획하신 큐레이터의 말을 한번 들어보는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 오늘 통역에는 성은주 선생님께서 수고해 주시겠습니다. 그럼 본격적으로 지금부터 두 분을 모시고 발표를 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 박수로 맞아주시기 부탁드립니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to the opening of this new exhibition, New Gameplay, at Beknamjun'Art-Center. And you all know that today is the birthday of Beknamjun, and that's why we are celebrating the idea of how Beknamjun, the very famous founder or father of media art, is connected to all the art movements of today and especially to the new game development. In this short curator's talk, we will try, both of us, Stephan and me, to explain the concept of this exhibition. After this, you can experience the works by yourself in the exhibition. Now, my title is Development Needs Subversion, and gaming is and has always been the most successful anthropological meta-strategy of experiencing life. At all times and throughout their history, humans have played. Indeed, one could even say that the entire development of humankind, its evolution both as individuals and as a species, depends to a great extent upon play, whether purposeless or purposeful, the pleasurable and natural exploration of one's ability and social competence, as well as the testing and constant pushing back of one's limits. Children explore their environment in play, just as both teenagers and adults learn the material and social conditions of our complex world through play. Gaming, as among the most successful strategies of research and development, is directly associated with subversion. Subversion, in this sense, means the creative use of elements of a given nature, technology, or society in order to experience, to enhance, or even to change its qualities, its structures, or content. This means development needs subversion, and this applies to the technological as well as to the social and political spheres. When as early as in 1963, Korean video art pioneer Beknamjun started his work Participation TV, he made a most subversive use of an everyday consumer item, the mass media television. Six years later, from 1969 to 1971, together with Japanese television genius Shuya Abe, they constructed a video synthesizer that made it possible to edit up to 7 different sources simultaneously in real time. Their intention was to create a machine which anyone can play like the piano. In his manifesto of 1974, Beknamjun proclaimed as follows: This machine, this synthesizer, will enable us to shape the TV screen canvas as precisely as Leonardo, as freely as Picasso, as colorfully as Renoir, as profoundly as Mondrian, as violently as Pollock, and as lyrically as Jasper Jones. Since the 1970s, this new video editing machine, based on the creative use of television, has found its way into mainstream broadcasting and has formatted the aesthetic perception of a whole generation. Today's development and massive use of unlimited video and image processing in the entertainment, communications and gaming industries is obviously based on the voluntary subversion of the more rigid, underdeveloped formats of the era before the interventions of Beknamjun. 20 years after Peg's invention of the video synthesizer, the Australian artist Geoffrey Shaw imagined to travel through a virtual city with a bicycle. Here are some of his video notes about this idea. So as you can see, the houses in this city are overlaid with letters, with words. In the very beginning, the first prototype of the work, The Legible City, was shown at Bonenfanten Museum in Maastricht in the Netherlands. In order to realize the very complex 3D graphics of this work, Shaw used specialized accelerated 3D graphics computer workstations and special IRIX software by Silicon Graphics Computer Systems, which had been designed for high-performance geometric computations for the US military, so a very specific computer which had not been in the hands of normal people. This work, The Legible City, was first coded in 1989, and afterwards it became the predecessor of most of immersive video works which we know in the domain of contemporary art. As you see here, in this work you are sitting on a bicycle and you are biking in a virtual city, and you can experience this work in the exhibition later on. Here's an overview over the city's topography. The houses are composed of letters. The letters form words, the words form sentences, and the sentences are related to the history of the city. During the 1990s, the ZKM Institute for Visual Media, under the direction of Geoffrey Shaw, starts to work on 360-degree video recording and display technology. They develop panoramic cameras and panorama projection, as well as the software for integrating the images of 25 cameras into only one image. I will just show some images out of one of the panorama screens.
At selected points, they can submerge in panoramic photos of the respective location. The basis for this immersive experience is the panorama screen of the Institute for Visual Media. The interface used is a specially developed laser point. To generate such a navigable information space, a special mode of representation was developed. It is based on the transformation of image data by means of a complex logarithm. Applied in real time to satellite images, this process enables the seamless traversal of complex pictorial information in both close-up and panoramic views. In addition, economic data is also used and sonified to be experienced by the users. Hence, Globorama updates the concept of panoramic vision for the present. The project enables the user to choose the coordinates of his virtual global exploration himself. And through audio-visual, site-specific information, he can experience his voyage physically.
The primary focus in creative research and production at this ZKM Institute for Visual Media was the development of innovative hardware and software installations for artistic projects. Panorama technology was among the developments. A display system which consists of the panorama screen, which you have seen, and an especially developed software system for recording the environment, the panorama display software. Today, this software and the use of this is in every pocket of each of you, with a massive development and worldwide use of mobile communications. Panorama technology has become an everyday application in every smartphone worldwide. I want to briefly introduce another work by Swiss artist Mark Lee. The title of this work is 10,000 Moving Cities. It was created in 2011, and you see here the version number 1 in the exhibition Imagining Media at the ZKM Center for Art and Media in Karlsruhe. Now here, what you see is about 20 cubes built of wood and painted white, on which is projected the image coming from the internet of 10,000 different cities. There is an interface like a touch screen, and on this touch screen you can see, you can choose the city which you want to see. On the left hand side you see the wooden cubes, and the lower left you see the masking of the flow of online images to the form and position of the cubes, which has been quite difficult work. And on the lower right image you see the touch screen interface for the selection of the cities. In 2013, October, we have also presented this work at the opening of National Museum for Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul. You see different images of this work in MMCA Seoul. And we have brought exactly this work to the Beknamjun Center and will present it here, but in a different format, without physical cubes, but with a very special system with goggles which permit us to immerse ourselves in a virtual space. By looking to the ground you find a map. You can choose a city on this map, and the images and sounds of this city which exist in the internet will be loaded immediately and will be mapped on the virtual cubes which you perceive in the goggles. Please take the time later to experience this work in the exhibition. Reuse, alienation, appropriation, or hacking, and certainly play, are the subversive acts from which ascend new developments out of known elements. Before the turn of the millennium, computer and video games were already a significant economic factor. Their enormous and wide distribution today not only evidences the rapid technological progress since then, but also the increased importance of video games as a general cultural technology. Through their massive use in mobile communications and by all public media, video games increasingly leave their imprint on our images of real and virtual worlds. Artists have always engaged creatively and enthusiastically with the potential of games and play, and thus have contributed substantially to the ongoing development of video games. At the same time, with subversively modified game engines and by programming their own art games, artists have acquired the most up-to-date gameplay skills with the intention of facilitating a differentiated and critical view. From this, new genres have evolved within the last 2 decades, art games and serious games, which we are showing in this exhibition and which are more likely to be found in exhibitions and festivals than in the gaming conventions of the commercial game industry. New gameplay is presenting artistic traditions of creative subversion from which develop new trends and genres in video games. With this new exhibition, Namjoon Paik Art Center offers a whole spectrum of unexpected new possibilities. Visitors of all ages can discover the close relationship of art and gaming, and also get to know games in which the creative and artistic as well as the political elements are the main focus. This game platform at Namjoon Paik Art Center offers all visitors access to the fascinating world of gaming. Start a new game. 감사합니다. Thank you for your attention.
감사합니다. Thank you for this opportunity to have this beautiful, wonderful experience in Korea at Namjoon Paik Art Center. I'm very honored. It's a great pleasure for me that I have the opportunity to be here. Thank you for this. And I will, in the next couple of minutes, talk about the concept of the exhibition in more detail. By the way, happy birthday, Beknamjun. The history of the video game as a medium begins with an act of hacking, a hack. In 1958, the prototype of the video game we know today was invented by an American scientist called William Higginbotham. He used an oscilloscope to make this game. It was a very simple tennis game for 2 players called Tennis for Two. It is here a creative subversion. Higginbotham uses a computer to play a game. That is, of course, something the computer was not intended to do originally. Video games have evolved since Higginbotham's prototype and are now very different to those of the early days. They are worlds apart from the classics like Pong from 1972 or Pac-Man from 1980. They are worlds apart technically, aesthetically, and above all commercially. Video games now exist in a diversity of variations, genres, and multifaceted forms, as well as in various art scenes, and they are now a highly complex medium. In the course of its history, the video game has developed its own specific repertoire of forms of expression. Our exhibition, New Gameplay, presents the video game as a medium that has achieved its own identity and has now entered a phase in which reflection plays a defining role. We combine video games with classical media art, like Geoffrey Shaw's Legible City, for example, and for the first time with artworks by Paik Namjoon. In New Gameplay, the medium of the video game is interrogated. The potentialities of the video game are the focus and not cementing its conventions. The selection of exhibits prioritizes experimental, unconventional, political, and artistic forms of the video game, and concentrating on these potentialities of the medium demonstrates how diverse the subject is, and at the same time allows its characteristics to emerge clearly. The idea of facilitating reflection on the medium plays a definitive role in the conception for new gameplay. The games are subjected to critical scrutiny. The objective of presenting video games is to contribute to investigating the medium and to reveal its implications, conditionalities, and characteristics, and render them comprehensible as a consequence. In this way, new gameplay makes a contribution to social awareness of this phenomenon and fosters competence in using and dealing with the medium. New gameplay presents the exhibits, the video games and artworks in an interactive, playable form where feasible. Visitors are invited to play the games together and to engage with the works of game art. A game that is not being played is a very sad thing. It's in a curious state of limbo. An unplayed game only exists as a static line of code. And when it is played, only when it is played, the game can develop its potential. For the theory of video games, Alexander Galloway put this in a nutshell. He said, video games are actions. And that is precisely what new gameplay stands for. Heinrich Klotz, that's a complicated German name, Heinrich Klotz, the founding director of our home institution, the ZKM, he said about this work, The Legible City by Geoffrey Shaw, the whole thing has something playful about it. The artwork has again become a game, and man has become man the player, homo ludens. From around 1995, artists began to use the medium of the video game as material and or to engage with the cultural influences emanating from them, as well as to work on them using other media. Artists appropriate video games. They are hackers using the games in a different way than intended. The first use of video games in the context of the art world is appropriation and creative subversion and disruption, a creative subversion of existing games. The first example of artists engaging with video games was Orhan Kipchak's and Reinhard Urban's video game modification Ars Doom that you can see here. Since then, the genre of game art has spawned a rich variety of artworks. In 1995, the architect Orhan Kipchak was commissioned by Peter Weibel, the artistic director of an art festival at that time, to produce an interactive piece for this art festival. The result was Ars Doom, this game you see here, a video game modification based on another game, Doom 2. So in 1995, there are artists who know video games from their childhood since the beginning of the video game industry in 1972. It is the first generation of artists with explicit video game literacy. They discover the potentials of video games against the background of emerging media art and net art scenes and begin to reflect their characteristics. The second reason is that in the 1990s, users gain access to the material of video games. Before 1995, tinkering with video games as computer programs required a large amount of specialized know-how and skill and money. In the 1990s, the video game company id Software opened their software products for everybody to use freely. They published the source code of Doom in 1997. Before that, users discovered that 1992 game Wolfenstein 3D was easily modifiable using simple tricks and primitive hacking routines. Thus, modification of games as a cultural practice emerged out of the early gaming communities on the internet, leading to the fact that artists began using these new techniques too. That is why a lot of artists appropriate games as hackers. Since the beginning of the 1970s, the video game has been a product in the context of a commercialized and professionalized industry. In the course of its professionalization, access to the product's code was denied. The video game as a product was closed by the industry and literally put into cases, cabinets, consoles, cartridges, and certain boxes. The concept of proprietary software was developed. Blocking access means that the first historical approach to use video games as artistic material lies in their almost parasitical appropriation, hence breaking open these boxes and gaining access again. And today, many internationally renowned artists have created works that refer to video games. For example, Fang Mangbo's Long March Restart that you can see in the exhibition, or pieces by Jody that you can see in the exhibition too, or even famous video artist Bill Viola, whose game you can see in the exhibition too. The original hacker, of course, was Baek Namjoon. One of his main artistic strategies was creative subversion and appropriation of media and technology. That is a very important aspect of our exhibition New Gameplay, showing the creative, playful subversion of media. A second link from Baek Namjoon to video games is that he very literally experimented with interactive TV images. Of course, they were analog, video games are digital, so it's a difference, but the artistic strategies are comparable. In this sense, he empowered the spectators of his early TV works to become users and even players. In New Gameplay, we show these connections between video games, media art, and Paek's work for the first time. Parallel to this artistic development and art history of video games, a trend can be observed where commercial games are beginning to probe and interrogate the characteristics and conventions of the medium. In New Gameplay, we present a lot of games that have a significant social and political relevance. At present, video games are in a phase of self-observation and self-reflection, which makes them open to all kinds of experiments. These trends are most marked in the segment of the so-called independent, yet nevertheless market-oriented indie games, independent games. Independent games offer alternatives to mainstream commercial games. And one of the focuses of New Gameplay is on these games, some of which have been created by just one or two authors. Indie games now have their own infrastructure, funding, festivals, artistic expression, and so on, and they frequently explore the medium in a qualitatively higher way than the so-called AAA games of the big industry publishers. So we can conclude and say, for 20 years, various forms of artistic, experimental, media reflective, as well as so-called serious types of computer games have been developed. New strategies in gaming are based on artistic research in the growing fields of audiovisual media. Computer games reflect and analyze the function and structure of our societies. In this sense, I want to invite you to start playing in our game exhibition, game platform, New Gameplay for Baek Namjoon Art Center. Start new game, and thank you for your kind attention. 감사합니다.
지금부터 관람객 여러분들께서 질문 있으시면 질문해 주시면 저희가 마이크를 전달해 드리도록 하겠습니다. 질문 있으신 분 계신가요?
예, 강연 잘 들었습니다. 그리고 굉장히 흥미로운 내용을 갖고 있어서 꼭 물어봐야 되겠습니다. 슈빙글러 씨한테 묻고 싶은데요. 비디오 게임이 계속 발전을 하면서, 그러니까 인터액션 기능이 있다는데, 일단 이 상호작용이 관객이 게이머가 돼가지고 그 게임에 참여를 했을 때 작가는 관객에게 뭔가 생산적이고 건설적이고 좋은 내용을 계속 경험하게 해주려고 하는 것 같은데 그런 것이 가능한지요?
Thank you very much for this question. Thank you. I have an example for you that is in the field of activism and is connected to environmentalist approaches. And this is a game you can play in the exhibition. It is called Phone Story. This is a game that is played on a smartphone, on an Apple device like this, and you can play the game, and it shows you the production process of the phone itself, how it is built and how the what materials are used and so on. And it shows the problems and exploitation that is used in producing iPhones and smartphones specifically. You have to, for example, in this game, force your workers that they harvest rare earths material from the ground in Africa, because you need these materials for building a smartphone. And in the end, the smartphone is obsolete and you have to recycle the materials. So this is clearly an environmental approach and a positive message to the player. So it's a mixture between education and political satire.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting lecture on that. And I found that a very interesting point. But I was also wondering, in this context, we also have this other discussion, which is the discussion of intellectual property, of copyright, which is obviously in interest of commercial interests of companies, but it is also obviously an interest of artists, of developers who see their ideas, intellectual properties taken away by somebody and who knows who may make money out of your idea. So how would you see this relation? Do you see it's that there's a contrast between these two aspects, or how would you see the relation between these two aspects?
The first artists who appropriated the games, they took especially certain kinds of games as their material. They were made by a company called id Software, and this company, they didn't care about intellectual property at all. So this is the very fact that that made possible that the video game entered art history as a new material. And today, of course, the open source movement proclaims that the video game as a medium, we have to take it back from the companies that are very specialized and they do proprietary software. But if the video game becomes an open medium, a democratic medium, then artists have access to it, and that's a new thing about video games. That is a new trend emerging at the moment.
예술이라는 전통적인 제도권에서 다루는 것이 작품의 보존이라는 측면인데, 일단 디지털이라는 패러다임이 바뀌면서 물성이 없는 작품들이 생성이 되고, 특히 이 게임이라는 분야의 차용, 정보, 상업성, 그리고 독립성, 이런 것들은 제도에 굉장히 반하는 개념인데, 단순히 매체의 기술적 보존 이외에 게임 아트에서 보존을 할 때 고려해야 되는 중요한 속성이라고 생각하는 것들이 어떤 것들이 있으신지 궁금합니다.
Well, this is a very good question, thank you. Because it points directly to a big problem we are facing in the future. Video games, and especially video game art pieces that are outside of the Kulturindustrie, cultural industry, they will be gone very soon if we do not act well immediately. So how to preserve them? There are different strategies. Just buying If it's a commercial game, just buy the game and put it in a library. But this will not render this will not solve the problems in the future, because the medium, the material, will become obsolete very, very quickly. MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, they started a collection of video games 2012, and they, for example, they managed to get hands on the source code of Tetris. You know Tetris, a famous video game. And but this is proprietary software. They had to persuade the maker, the original maker of the game, Alexei Pachinov, a Russian guy, that he gives the source code to MoMA. And that is something very unusual.
This question is highly intriguing and of highest importance, not only for the preservation of games, but for the preservation of all what we are doing in the digital culture. So since we have had this shift from the analog to the digital since maybe 20 years, we have become completely dependent on the digital culture, and this means also that we have become dependent on hardware and software marketing and marketing strategies. I think we are in, how to say, let me call it a trap, and we will not escape from this trap. In the ZKM we are working on this problem since about 10 years, very intensely, and we don't have a solution. We have many different solutions, and the different solutions are very much confusing on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, after 3 years or after 5 years, we have to find another new solutions, because technology and development are so fast that we have to run all the time to get it, and when we've got it, it's already obsolete.
I'd like to add 2 remarks very, very quickly. The first is that there are hundreds of thousands of video games already, and MoMA has chosen 40 to keep. 40. I don't know how many. The relationship is just ridiculous. And how can we choose the ones to keep? It's a difficult question I cannot answer at the moment, but we see at the moment that there is a canon evolving. We choose video games that can be preserved. And the second remark is about archiving strategies. The strategy that gives us hope is emulation, for example. Meaning that we can take an old digital artifact and make it playable, usable on a new computer system. But this means that we have to continuously keep working on that. There is no one solution.
오늘 수고해주신 베르나르트 제렉스와 슈테판 슈빙글러, 그리고 통역의 성은주 선생님께 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.